Hello, and welcome to the EUROPAST Podcast. This podcast is part of the international project EUROPAST, funded from the Horizon Europe WIDERA program. EUROPAST tackles contemporary issues in memory studies, memory politics, political discourse, and most importantly, public history, a field of study and practice that explores the ways in which the production of knowledge about history can be rendered more democratic, open, collaborative, and empowering, as well as the challenges associated with this process. In this podcast, members of the project team talk to public history practitioners, researchers, historians, activists, filmmakers, and many others about the developments, challenges, and implications of this fascinating approach of dealing with the past. If you would like to know more about the project, follow EUROPAST on Facebook and Twitter. We hope you enjoyed today's episode. Today, my colleague Ignė and I are joined by Rasa Antanavičiūtė, director of the newly established Vilnius Museum at the heart of the Old Town in Vilnius. Rasa is also a researcher and an author. In 2019, she published a monograph called Arts and Politics in the Public Spaces of Vilnius, for which she received a Vilnius Club Award. 2 years later, the Vilnius Museum opened its doors under her leadership, and the rest is history. Joining us alongside Rasa are her colleague Živilė Miežytė, the museum's curator of events and education. Rasa, Živilė, you are also the curators of the museum's newest exhibition titled Inconvenient Vilnius. It is an exhibition about the people who, according to your website, Vilnius residents would prefer not to see, and about beliefs that fuel conflict and make life more difficult. Why? What is the idea behind the exhibition, and why did you decide to talk about it?
Well, the idea came around, there are two reasons basically, but the idea came around last year when Vilnius was celebrating its 700th anniversary of mention of Vilnius' name. And, during all anniversaries, we talk only about positive and great things of the jubilee, whatever, person or object. And there were so many nice pictures and so many nice memories. And we thought that after the anniversary year is over, maybe it's worth kind of having a rather heavy after party and thinking about objects or persons that are not so great and that were kind of not seen or ignored during the anniversary year. Another reason is that Vilnius Museum was established with a mission to draw attention to uncomfortable and overseen aspects of Vilnius history and present. So this exhibition is finally kind of the essence, the result, the realization of this mission. All our exhibitions used to have some parts that would be more or less uncomfortable, but this is finally the whole thing that is uncomfortable from the beginning to the end.
The exhibition talks about themes that don't seem to fit the picture of the ideal city. Is Vilnius unique? Is there a city anywhere in the world without such uncomfortable themes?
Yeah, this was also one of the questions that we discussed a lot during the creation process of the exhibition. In general, we've been talking a lot about what this quote-unquote inconvenient means. And basically, we sort of came up with the conclusion that perhaps these are topics or issues that are connected with the experience of living in the cities in general, in a way. But then somehow, like every city has, it's always like location specific, or it has, certain ways that some challenges, takes place in the reality, and so on and so forth. So in a way, it's kind of general, but also the form or the shape it takes is also unique, I would say.
Why did you decide to use the adjective inconvenient as opposed to uncomfortable? Because when I was looking up the exhibition, I immediately translated it as uncomfortable, but then I had to double check because in Lithuanian it can be both of those things.
Right, and I now realize that I also used uncomfortable answering my first question. So uncomfortable relates more to physical comfort, and inconvenient relates more to things that are inconvenient in our minds. So that was my mistake, and the title of the exhibition is correct.
So we were discussing a lot, like inconvenient to whom, or who is experiencing the inconvenience. And, you can think about it or look at it from different perspectives. But I think one of the ways that we were reasoning about it was to actually that perhaps it is inconvenient or uncomfortable for the people, for the majority, maybe we could say, right? Because a lot of groups that we talk about or consulted with also, like, they're not part of the general majority of Vilnius residents, right? So you can take different ways to look at it, I guess.
Yeah, very true. So, but also I think it's inconvenient to this majority. Because maybe not majority, but of some visitors of the exhibition, because after going through the exhibition and finding out, for example, the results of a survey about whom majority of Vilnius residents would rather avoid, and looking at other facts and issues that are presented in the exhibition, we hope that many people would feel inconvenient and uncomfortable about themselves, or we feel uncomfortable about ourselves. Why the hell we are so intolerant, and how come we are still very far from this ideal picture and ideal society. So this kind of revelation or whatever, the feeling is quite uncomfortable as well, because when we tend to think that we are now very, very tolerant and very advanced in human rights and whatever, and this is far from being true.
Rasa, in one interview, you say that you have also talked to experienced experts. Were these people willing to communicate? How was it to communicate with them?
Right. Employees of the museum, they are historians, anthropologists, journalists. I am myself art historian. So, and the issues we are talking about, perhaps it's now time to kind of name some of them at least. And this is ethnic and religious intolerance, LGBTQ community, refugees, poverty, sex services, sex work, addictions, alcohol and drugs, and also all kinds of diseases and epidemics, as well as
psychological well-being, maybe psychological health, or
psychological health and psychological disabilities. So probably that's anti-Semitism that Živilė has mentioned. So these are probably all the 10 topics that we are dealing with. And as I said, employees at the museum, the curators, are not really specialists of these topics. So we needed badly consultants, and we really used them and abused them probably at some point, asking to help us to find information, asking to look through our texts and to correct our vocabulary, to asking to connect us with people from those groups and actually getting the knowledge, and not only the knowledge, but also the objects that would be shown at the exhibition. So people who are working with those groups, so for example, employees of NGOs and other groups that help people from the mentioned communities, they were really willing to help, and it was really very easy to deal with. Živilė was dealing more with people themselves, and maybe then she can tell about her experience.
Mm-hmm. So I think, we were very... As Rasa mentioned, it was a crucial part of the exhibition to actually include or cooperate with people who have the experience, right, of the topics that we discussed. And so we had interviews with, for example, people with refugees background or Jewish background, or people, foreigners living in Vilnius and experiencing all sorts of hate speech and things like that. And of course, the topics are not easy to talk about, and the experiences are oftentimes heavy to share. But people were really, most of the time, very much willing to share their experiences, and they felt, I think, as much as I learned from them, they felt that it was, a nice kind of way to reflect also on their experiences. But we also, of course, allowed people to retrieve from the interviews at any time if they would feel uncomfortable talking about uncomfortable or inconvenient. Also, and actually these things did happen. For example, I had we had planned an interview with someone from refugee background, and that person actually canceled the interview. And although I didn't ask him, but he did explain that the whole experience is too hurtful to go through again. And of course, we accepted that and respected that. And of course, we also tried, to make sure that we do not do any harm for the people who were willing to share their experiences and things like that. And as Rasa also mentioned, we did these people who did they were huge an important part of the exhibition. It would be a completely different exhibition, I think, if they wouldn't have shared their stories. They also did lend us some of the objects that we used in the end, and in general just guided us through topics that we had no personal experiences with. So I think in general it was a very interesting and enriching process.
These are really very vulnerable people, and one of the very important issues while preparing the exhibition was to keep in mind this vulnerability, and the consultants helped us to deal with these topics carefully. So not to do more harm, not to expose them as some, in a zoo or anything, not to make things too romantic, not to make things too exotic. And there were many kind of pitfalls that we were trying to avoid. So, for example, this vulnerability shows when we wanted to thank them. That's the tradition of the museum, to thank all the people who contributed, who helped to do the exhibition, to prepare it, on one of our walls, like intro wall of the exhibition. And none of these interviewees with whom Živilė talked, they didn't want to give their names. So we only have initials or nothing at all.
Also, there were some parts of the interviews that we did that were super interesting, but at the end, we did not include them because we tried to, protect the interviewees or the participants from, disclosing more personal information and things like that. So, yeah.
Have you had any of them visiting the exhibition and maybe giving you any feedback or telling you their impressions and how they were feeling, seeing that part of their story is displayed on the museum?
I had the pleasure of welcoming a group of people from psychiatric hospital in Nauja Vilnia, for example, and I think this is one of the nicest things to do, to tell their story, and also to welcome them in the exhibition and to tell them about the other parts, but also about that part. And Yes, they are visiting. I think that during the opening, there were really many people who took part in the preparation. Feedback was really positive. Maybe that's not objective picture, but we have the positive feedback picture.
And talking about museum, Vilnius Museum seems to be trying and succeeding in engaging visitors since its opening, choosing themes and even terminology that museums traditionally avoid, including various groups like school children, and the creation of exhibitions in very engaging and participatory ways. Why is this approach to practicing history important to you, and what are your values as a museum today?
Well, I think this kind of collaborative mood or collaborative mode of working, it's probably like the feature of Vilnius Museum. And it comes from a need to tell micro stories and also to collect stories from the present. So not only to deal with history, not only to deal with archives and historical papers, but also to collect stories from today and from recent past. So there were several projects, probably every exhibition included interviews. So Vilnius Museum has a separate section in its collections, which is interviews with Vilnius residents. So that's really an important part of our work, and we see it, this kind of audio collection, as a very important contribution to the history of the city. We think that this way, one thing is that we collect these memories and information, but on the other hand, it's easier to tell the big story when telling the micro stories and small stories, and it's easier to kind of step into the shoes of these people, ordinary people that tell their part of Vilnius history. This makes the museum more accessible. We hope that it makes the stories that we tell at the museum more accepted, more felt. Well, empathy is probably one of the key words that we're trying to do. So learn history through empathy, kind of the slogan could be. And then these private stories from private people really help. Živilė worked a lot, for example, with the residents of one of the districts in Vilnius, and also with school kids and teenagers. And this was also a very interesting experience. Maybe she can tell shortly.
So I think just, to add on what you said, so I think it's it becomes way more relatable, I guess, for the visitors, to, as you say, like to learn from micro stories or not grand narratives, but rather, like everyday experiences of, living together in this city, basically. And then I guess, it's kind of a more, the plurality of voices then in the end is what, shapes the bigger picture of, being part of the city. And I think it sort of allows, to not only, this including people, engaging people, and looking at their stories as something that has value in our museum, in our city, in our history, is also something that allows people, I think, to become more of not only the consumers of the museum or the museum experience of or the cultural institutions in general, or more of creators, co-creators, or feel.
I would even put it broader. I would put it that this way. Somehow people are less users of the city and more owners of the city. So basically nurturing owners who have some knowledge about the city and who value the knowledge that they have about certain area makes them I hope, more responsible and more engaged in the city altogether.
Yeah, but then I think it also connects to the topic of accessibility, and usually I think more typically when we talk about accessibility, it's usually, physical. We talk about physical barriers or, accessibility in the context of disabilities or things like that, or special needs. But then I think, oftentimes it's also accessibility of knowledge or accessibility of stories, right? And I think it all connects to these more relatable, human, at the core experiences of history.
I actually would like to ask about a previous exhibition from if I'm not mistaken with the title, Stories from Krasnucha, I believe, was it called? And if I'm not mistaken, you both worked on that exhibition as well, right? I know that Živilė has. And I remember I went to the exhibition and you worked with school children there, but not only collecting stories from them, but actually engaging them in the process of making these stories through documentary footage, through notes, through photographs. And I just wanted to, and I remember being so very impressed by it. And then I even went back to my master's thesis and then I edited because I thought I have to include this. This is very, very interesting. So I just wanted to ask, what was that experience like?
So it definitely was a very interesting and engaging experience for me and the whole everyone in the museum. I think having teenagers around in the museum way more like I think they like school students, like high school students, are not one of the groups that would typically feel that museum is their space. So I think that with that project we sort of tried to address that issue, let's say. And of course, working with that group was both challenging, but also very enriching experience, as I said. And yeah, for sure. So I think it does connect with what I said before. It's like this project sort of allowed teenagers to not, only look at the museum as something, that is there, that someone else did, or worked or decided or, had the power to do things actually, but then, actually have them feel that, both power, but also responsibility of becoming, curators,
curators
and creators, exactly. So yeah, so that was definitely very cool experience.
What role does the museum play in the current context of history memory institutions in Lithuania? What is unique and innovative about your approach?
I guess we have partly answered, right? This micro story collecting and audio interviews and audio files would probably be the thing that, to my knowledge, none of museums in Lithuania is doing it so kind of persistently and constantly. Obvious uniqueness of this museum is that we deal with topics that tell something about Vilnius, and the museum kind of filled the gap because traditionally city museums they appeared in the beginning of the 20th century, and majority of European capitals do have city history museums or city museums since then, but Vilnius is unique in the fact that it didn't have a city museum, and there's a reason for that. The reason is history, and inconvenient history of Vilnius, which was kind of a problem to all the political powers that we hear. And finally, now after 30 years of independence, current political powers accept all the complicated history of the capital and of the city, and the museum was established, as I said, with credit to deal with uncomfortable past. So maybe that's also quite interesting, as the museum is new and it has this credit of dealing with uncomfortable issues.
And to end our short but very interesting episode, I'd like to ask, what do the visitors say about the exhibition? And the title already states that the exhibition is inconvenient. Have you received or experienced any inconvenient remarks or impressions?
We have, yes. These questionnaires or surveys that we exhibit in the exhibition as well, they do represent probably the opinion of majority of Vilnius residents. Not many of them come to the exhibition, but some of them do. And then we've had comments that the exhibition is crap and all wrong. And some comments that, if we talk about LGBTQ plus community, it shouldn't be in the beginning of the exhibition, at least. It has to be in the end somewhere. So there are comments like that, but really not a lot. I would say that we expected that there would be more hate speech and more negative feedback.
Yeah, I guess we sort of prepared for that. But somehow...
Maybe August is not the right month for bad feedback, so September is coming and we'll see.
The winter is coming.
But I guess, people... I guess in the exhibition, like, people do share their opinions, but not perhaps about the exhibition, but about the subject, the themes, that we discuss in the exhibition. And we have one participatory engagement, interactive, where people do share their stories, answering questions that we ask in these sort of like paper cards, and people do share their stories. And it's very fascinating actually to see how, people somehow get... I should finish, right?
Yeah, so I think I should finish. I mean, there's a bench in the exhibition where visitors can stop, read some questions, and answer them from their own experience. And the questions are really personal, relating to the topics that we deal in the exhibition. And I was very skeptical about this idea. I thought no one will really sit and write, and what the hell? It's my own, ideas, and I would not share them. But people do share, and it's amazing, really, how honest these replies are. And they leave us these replies. They are totally anonymous, but we exhibit them on the wall, some of them, and for the other visitors can actually read them. Not all of them, but some of them. And it's really, these answers really contribute to the exhibition and to its topics. So there are this kind of really expansion of the things that we were telling in the exhibition, and then the visitors contribute to the content, which is really fascinating.
Okay, thank you very much for talking to us. And you can visit the exhibition Inconvenient Vilnius until New Year's. Bye.